All right. All right, everybody come in. Welcome to another little lecture I'm about to give on just breaking down basically how we're becoming insulated, how we've insulated ourselves, sometimes not even consciously, but other times it is consciously that we're being insulated by our own accord, by things that we put in our body or things that we put on our body, and also we being insulated by things that we can't really control. But I'm basically going to break it down anatomically, in an anatomical order, kind of how we've been insulating ourselves, starting from the hair all the way to our exterior environment, and how we insulated ourselves from that situation that we previously came out of. So let's define, what it means to be insulated. It means, to place in a detached situation, to separate from conducting bodies by means of non-conductors, as to prevent transfer of electricity, heat, or sound. So that's basically the definition of what it means to be insulated. And what are non-conductors? We have like rubber, and we'll go into some of these materials that are not conducive to electrical charge, that don't conduct electrical charge through them. But there's non-conductors and there's conductors, and we're going to talk about the differences of those too. But first I wanted to get into the hair, starting from anatomical, how we're actually insulating ourselves from there, because our hair actually holds electrical charge and is receiving stimulus and information. It's actually an extension of our nervous system if you really look into it. So our hair is picking up signals from our environment that we are interpreting in many types of ways. So if we are cutting off our hair, or if we're not letting our hair grow out, then we are in some way or another changing our receptivity to our environment, because we are now cutting off some sort of connection that we would have had, a perception that we would have had, even if it was at a heightened level that wasn't really as prominent as other senses. Still, we are depriving ourselves of some sensory input if we are not having the extension of our nervous system. If you think about it, we're the only animal that really cuts its hair like we do, and every other animal, like lions, have their mane, and all types of animals have different hair growing out of their bodies. Yet we are the only ones that are consistently cutting it, dyeing it, and just doing all kinds of things, adding chemicals to it, and that's insulating us from that electrical charge. Like if you notice, the hair is one sign that hair is easily electrical, that's easy to see, is that if you rub a balloon against it, creating friction, that creates a negative charge, and you can actually see that there's charge being distributed from the hair. So that's just an easy example of how just the hair already. So if you're putting chemicals on it, if you're dyeing it, if you're bleaching it, you're stripping that hair of its ability to conduct electrical charge already from there. So that's already an insulator. And furthermore, let's go into some of the other stuff. So then you're gonna have your eyes, right? This is super important because a lot of people wear sunglasses, they're wearing glasses, and they're basically insulating their eyes from information. Because when you're intaking light from the sun, you're intaking information, really, because it's stimulus from your environment that's relaying to your body how to behave. And works like this. So you have the sun, it's transmitting sunlight that's going into your eye, into the retina, through the optical nerve, and into something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is what creates a biological rhythms for your body. So basically, if you're not getting that information, your organ systems and your body systems, they're not attuned to how they should be. They're not being functional in the way they should be, because they haven't received the information from the sunlight that's relaying to them how to function properly, because everything functions on a clock. Every organ is functioning on a biological rhythm, and if you're not in tune with it, because you're blocking your eyes from the sunlight, then you're actually disrupting that natural rhythm that otherwise would occur. And even like the glasses are even crutches, because they really not going to the root of the issue, which is we need to put nutrition into the eye, and we need to remove obstructions and and that's caused by further insulation in other parts of the body, i.e. mucus or biofilms and different sort of things that accumulate in our body because of also the lifestyle that we're living. So also let's go into the sound, right? That's another insulator. We're insulated from our natural environment and really what we're supposed to be listening to, because really we're supposed to be able to hear our environment and tune into what's going on and being relaying information to us about what's going on. But nowadays we're bombarded with so many artificial sounds and man-made sounds, like cars, planes, music, all these things, and we're not even have that part of us tuned in. Really, like animals have that instinct. They hear any little noise and they're already planning and plotting what their decisions are going to make, and they're relaying that information through their nervous system. But since we are kind of bombarded by so many artificial man-made sounds, we really don't have that sense about us on how to really respond to sensory information that is vital in a natural environment to our health. Because if you're listening out, you can listen for animals. We know that certain animals are making certain sounds to warn for predators that when they live in a symbiotic relationship with other organisms. They actually warn other animals of incoming predators. And just like that, that's one component of how our sound has been compromised. Plus, everybody nowadays is wearing headphones. We're walking around with artificial sound in our ears, not even tuning into that sense, that organ, that system that is relaying information to us. So we're kind of becoming less human by fitting into this modern world, because we're using parts of us that we would be using a lot more in our natural environment, that we would be using to its full capacity. So the ears, the listening, the sound, that's another component of the insulation that's being happening. When you're wearing headphones, you're literally insulating yourself from noise from your environment that's relaying information on how to survive and what moves to make in that environment that's going to be vital to your survival. So then we have the mouth is another insulator. This is the biggest, where a lot of the insulation comes from, that we generate diseases from, because people are putting into their body toxic substances that are insulating their internal biology. So we have like heavy metals, right? Heavy metals actually change the polarity of your intestines, allowing biofilm bacteria formations to happen in your intestines. And what that's creating a harbor for microorganisms so that they can lodge themselves and live within your intestinal walls. And they're just harboring parasites and other types of microorganisms that are creating toxins to your body by being harbored inside of your body, right? So the food is super important. It's not food actually, because when we break it down, we can break down food even further. If you really break it down, what it comes down to is electrons. And if you're eating food, because this is how it works, right? The sun is sending its electrons via the light, and those electrons, actually I'm gonna read something. So electrons possess let me see, where is this at? Where is this? Okay. High energy electrons from sunlight transfer their energy to food, where it is stored as electrons in the covalent bonds of food molecules. When eaten, these high energy sun electrons in live food molecules transfer their energy to us. So basically what this is saying is that we're receiving electrons from the food. People think they're eating for nutrition, they're eating for proteins, carbohydrates. Cool, that's a very basic level of understanding. But if we look further, we can see that actually we're getting electrons from food. And these electrons are actually what the cells use to create ATP, aka energy. So if you have enough of these electrons, you're actually creating energy for your cells. So really, when we look down into nutrition and survival and having life force, we can really break it down a lot further than carbohydrates, lipids, or proteins, amino acids. It actually goes down further, and we can look at it from a more quantum perspective of that we're actually receiving electrons from the food that we're intaking. Now, this is important too, because we have foods that are antioxidants and that are going to neutralize free radicals. A free radical is a molecule that is inside of your body that one of its that electrons hasn't been paired, so it's looking for an electron to pair with, and in the process these things become they're very reactive, and they can damage proteins and DNA and carbohydrates and lipids and cellular membranes, and so these free electrons are just floating throughout your body, and if you don't have the antioxidants, the free radical scavengers that is going to pair that electron up with that unpaired electron in that molecule, either that or it's going to drop that electron to make it stabilize, neutralize. That's why we say neutralize free radicals, because that's essentially what we're doing. We're neutralizing the free radicals via the antioxidants that can come not just from food, but when we look further, we're going to see that actually these free electrons actually coming from other sources as well. And let's just go down the line. I want to talk about the food, because it's very important, because a lot of people don't understand that they're clogging up their system with artificial chemicals and all these things that are really not digested and not processed well by the body, because they're never intended to be in the body in the first place. So we have like mucoid plaquing, we have the biofilms, we have just mucus causing food that's causing congestion and clogging up your body from the food that you're eating, because you're eating these synthetic compounds that really can't be broken down, that's changing the polarity of your intestinal walls, and that's attracting microorganisms and all kinds of organisms that are going to create toxins, just because the byproduct of their excretions is toxins to your body. They're acid, they're really acid, and they're polluting your blood, and they're making the blood acid. So that's why people talk about alkaline acid. That's why they're referring to it, trying to neutralize some of the acidity and get to a more alkaline state, which is where your body wants to be at, and find that equilibrium. So we have to be careful about the food we're eating, even if you don't feel it right now. A lot of people, they get deceived because they think that they don't receive immediate. They don't feel sick immediately. They think that it's not having a harmful, deleterious effect on their body. But in reality, these things accumulate, and it's also dependent on our genetic expression and what kind of genes you have weaknesses in, depending on your ancestral lineage or your heritage, or the genes you've inherited. You're going to have weaknesses. Some people, these show up sooner. Some people show up later. But at the end of the day, these substances are not helping us in our vitality in our body in order to function at its most optimum level. So just because you don't feel the effects right now, it accumulates over time, and some of us have detoxification pathways that are more open than others, and other people, so there's a lot of factors that play into this. But when we look at the basis of what we're supposed to be eating, is just supposed to be eating high electron live foods. That's why the live food diet is so powerful, because it's super rich in electrons, and we're using those electrons to create energy at the cellular level. So when we talk about the raw food diet, that's why this is super important, that we eat all these raw foods, because they're providing us with that electrical charge. So let's just go down. I know I have this diagram that's roughly mapped out, but I just wanted to cover some of the areas. I wanted to go into the skin, how we're constantly wearing synthetic chemicals. A lot of people don't really know this, but like even the clothing you're wearing, okay, if you're not wearing organic material made from organic fibers like cotton, silk, any of these wool, these are conductive because they're natural materials. But whenever you get into the man-made materials, these derive from like petrochemicals and like nylon and all these synthetic fibers. They're being derived from petrochemicals. So you're basically wearing petroleum on your body, and that's reducing your respiration of your body, and that's also blocking, because a lot of, even any kind of sunlight is going to have some deleterious effects on your health when it's done in excess, because you're not allowing the electrons from the sunlight to hit your skin. You're not generating melanin. Melanin absorbs 99.9% of UV light, which is super important as well. But if you're covering up your skin, every area of your skin, you're not receiving that nutrition. And even worse, if you're using synthetic fibers, then you're even in a worse place, because you're not even allowing your body to have a cellular respiration. You're allowing microorganisms to take hold in your body, because of it's creating a terrain for that microorganism. So like you're constantly sweaty and you're getting fungal and bacterial infections all over your body, like athlete's foot, you know, because you're covering your body up with cotton and these cloths and these fibers, and then you're creating a terrain for bacteria and fungus to harbor and proliferate and create damage and just damage to the body in different ways. So we got to watch out for these synthetic fibers that are derived from petrochemicals. And then okay, I want to get into the genitals a little bit too, because this is crazy too, how we're literally snipping off a part of our anatomy, and that unbeknownst to us, we don't really realize it, but this holds a lot of nervous system input. So when you're having sex, it's an exchange of information, really, when you break it down to even deeper level. But you got to realize that we in America and all over the world, it's kind of become a tradition to snip, to circumcise. Even women used to be circumcised, you know. Genital mutilation became a common practice, and even that, now that you're cutting off literally nerve endings in the tip of your penis, that is really reducing the amount of information you're getting from that information energy exchange. So even that, you know, is in itself is a crazy paradigm to be thinking that we need to do this to our bodies, when in reality that's a protective mechanism from bacteria, and that's supposed to be covered up. But there's a whole theory that goes back to this, how the Catholics were propagating this circumcision because they thought that it would get people to stop masturbating, but it didn't. But anyways, that's where it stems from. It has nothing to do with real health or anything that's really going to help you in the long run, because your body's designed a certain way. It's been evolved. Whatever you want to believe, it's here, and it's in its right form, and we need to kind of abide by what our body is, the innate intelligence that our body holds, right? So I wanted to get into the feet. This is really important, because when we're wearing shoes, when we're wearing actually anything that's on our feet that's not conductive to electrical charge, we are really doing ourselves a big disservice, because we are literally, like I said, I was talking about the free radicals. The electrons that you receive when you step on the earth with your bare feet, they literally act as free radicals. They act as antioxidants, neutralizing free radicals. I'm sorry, but so you're really getting antioxidants from the earth when you step on the earth barefoot. Now, we used to have more biologically appropriate footwear. We used to have surfaces that were actually conductive, like we used to wear leather and some other conductive surfaces, but even that is still limiting your foot from its full capacity, because you're supposed to be relaying information to your nervous system, via your nervous system, to your body, about your environment, based on what you're stepping on, the surface you're stepping on. But now it's completely been cut off. We are literally stepping on the same surface, step after step after step. We can't really differentiate much between the surfaces that we're stepping on, because in nature, in a natural environment, this information would be super critical and important. You step into moist information, you understand, oh, there's moisture there, there's some water, there might be a water source nearby, or things of that nature. Or you step on a hard surface or a muddy surface. This is all information that we're supposed to be relaying. But even further than that, we can see that the electrical charge from the planet, you know, the planet has a charge. And when you step your feet, bare feet on the ground, you're actually getting some of those negative electrons that are acting as antioxidants and neutralizing the free radicals. So this is super, super important. We need to realize that we need to be connected to the earth, literally. Like, when I talk about it, I'm not talking about it like from some crazy, abstract perspective. It's like some real shit. Like, you need to connect your feet to the ground, because that's part of being a species on this planet, is that that's helping you really locate yourself where you at, and like literally ground you. Like, it's crazy. Like, it literally grounds you, because you become aware of the realization that you need the planet to survive, and the planet is what keeps your homeostasis active at a full potential when you are living in accordance with the planet and its natural laws. And that's like something that I like to communicate, because that's really what it boils down to, is living in accordance with the nature and natural laws that have been implemented, and they're already here, that are eternal, that are really governing every area of our physiology, our biology, of the physics of the way the universe functions. You know, we need to look at it from that perspective, because it goes way deeper than nutrition. Like, you need to zoom back out levels and levels so you can see the whole picture of what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to encapsulate this experience that we're having in the terms that you need to live it, that you should understand, so that you can live it to its full potential. Because now that I wanted to go into the environment, how we're isolated, we're in boxes. Even right now, I'm in a box. I'm broadcasting my signal out to you guys through a box. I'm in a room. I'm isolated from the environments. I'm not feeling the heat. You know, there's so many factors that I'm not aware of, because I'm literally in a box. And this could be a metaphor for how we live our lives in our brain, how we have these boxes that we create around ourselves, and we get stuck in these boxes, and we're not allowed to really venture out because we lock ourselves in these boxes. So being in this box, we're literally isolated from our natural environment. We're not receiving stimulus from the environment via sound, via the eyes, via the light, via our skin brushing against the electrons that are floating in the air, via our feet that are not receiving the free electrons from the planet, via the smells from our environment that are relaying vital, important information. And then so all this is like the super isolation, right? Living in a box, working in a box is super isolation. And even further than that, we're living in a sterilized environment, because we're super obsessed with sterilization. We have this notion that bacteria and viruses are everywhere, and they're out to get us, and they're going to kill us, and we must live in a super clean environment, or else we're not going to be able to survive. And what this kind of mentality does, isolating ourselves from bacteria, when in reality our gut microbiome is literally all bacteria. Is all bacteria. You can't escape bacteria. If you have a fear of bacteria or viruses, you probably should get over that fear as soon as you can, because that's not really helping you. Every animal lives in symbiosis with microorganisms, but how we live today, we're not living in equilibrium, because we are allowing certain microorganisms in our body that shouldn't be in there, and we're providing a terrain for them to harbor inside that we shouldn't have in our body, this terrain. So we need to realize that our environment is super important, and as such, so are these bacteria and these viruses. It's not like, this is what I tell people, it's not as much about the viruses and the bacteria, but it's much about your internal terrain and how it really is relaying these viruses, how it's dealing with them. Because if you have a messed up immune system, you know, the issue is not to isolate yourself from bacteria and viruses, it's to boost your immune system, so that in the inevitable moment when you do come in contact with these bacteria and viruses, your body will fight these viruses and bacteria and these external predators off, really. So don't look at it in the regards of trying to isolate yourself, because the more we move into isolation, we move into these ultra sterilized environments, we are going down a bad path. And we can already see that, because we have like superbugs that are created out of these super sterilized environments, and people say, oh, we just need to get more sterilized, but that's not the point. The point is to build up your microbiome, to be exposed to these bacteria and viruses, so we build up immunity naturally over time to our environmental bacteria and microorganisms. You know, it's not to run away from them and isolate ourselves, because then we're just making ourselves weaker to these things. So this isolation, this insulation from these bacteria and these microorganisms in the long run is not helping us. We need to be exposed. We've always been exposed during our millions of years of evolution, or however you want to perceive this reality. We are supposed to be around these organisms, and we're supposed to live in equilibrium, but we're supposed to understand how to live. But the more we isolate ourselves, we create problems for ourselves. Okay, so yeah, we basically have the environment. I already went over the body and the internal environment, and how it's all creating insulation. And basically we've never been this insulated in our life. We've never experienced this level of insulation in our lives. Even in past civilizations, we had food that were organic, locally grown. They weren't sprayed with pesticides. Even back in the Greek, Roman times, civilizations of old that collapsed, we didn't have this level of insulation. We didn't have this level of toxicity. We didn't have this level of craziness that we're experiencing. Because now we're subject to being insulated by things that we can't even decide. Like, we have things being sprayed in the atmosphere that is insulating us from the information from the sun, so we don't even have control of that anymore. So it's just the levels of insulation that we're experiencing is beyond our really imagination. And the more you understand that you need to be free flowing, you need to be like Bruce Lee said, you need to be like water, and you need to be flowing, and that's the flow of electrical charge that carries out from the sun to the planet to the food, and then you eat the food, and that it just needs to keep flowing, that electrical charge. And as soon as you start impeding that with insulation, you run into problems, because everything in the universe is flowing. Nothing is stagnant, and everything's always flowing. And even electrons, they're influenced by the electrical magnetic fields, and they increase their vibration depending on the electromagnetics that they're exposed to. And it's actually a mathematical equation, because electrons, they're ordered in integers. It's a mathematical equation, and they jump by integers. And so everything around us is pretty much mathematical. Like, we just have to really look at it from a deeper perspective, because we have to gain the understanding as an organism living on this planet, like, see what's really going on. Like it goes deeper than the food. That's why people want to stop at the food. But if you stop at the food, you're really doing yourself a big disservice, because the food is just really one small component of this thing we call life, that we need to look at it from different perspectives. To me, like, the sunlight and getting out is, like, I would probably say almost more important than the food itself, because if you're not getting the information from your environment and being out in the natural environment, you're really limited to how your body can perform, and the potential that your body has to perform. So all this, just remember, like, when we're talking about insulation, just try to remove insulation and allow for conductivity to flow. And this is electrons flowing in your body. And the more you get to the state of consistent conductivity without much insulation, you're gonna experience health just as a byproduct of being tapped into that natural order of things. So that's just what the topic I want to talk about today, and hopefully I'll make more videos, and we can discuss further this topic of insulation and how to liberate ourselves from really being closed off from the electrical information that we need in order to have vibrant and ultimately the best health that we can. All right, so I'll see you guys.